Okay, here we are, back again, Michigan Conservative Roundtable. Mac is to my left, Kim is to my right, and we're going to talk about a movement that's kind of spreading across the country. I read an article. By a, let me get this. I read an article by a Valerie Richardson, and in this article she uses the term Vexit. What is Vexit? Well, you've heard of Brexit, Britain getting out of the EU, Brexit. Well, Vexit, you got a fair amount of counties in Virginia that want to become part of West Virginia, given the hostility in politics and whatnot. And so she came up with the term Vexit. And but it involves more than just Virginia. And in previous videos, you know, Mac and I, we touched on issues and what might be a trigger point for another civil war, and you know, this takes you, this is on the path to that scenario. And she cites 5 states, and I've already mentioned Virginia. You got Virginia. Quite a few counties, and this is being driven by the gun issue also, by the way. Then you have Oregon, and the east end of Oregon basically wants to be part of Idaho. And she mentioned Oregon. I was a little surprised she didn't include Washington.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, because we did an article, or we did a segment on Washington and the hostility of the Pacific Coast.
Maybe that's coming.
Yeah. So, you know, she mentioned Oregon, and I immediately thought, okay, state of Washington to the north also. You got parts of Illinois that are just dying to escape the insanity in Chicago. Okay. California, for some years now you've heard about how they want to bust that up into another couple states or something, because parts of California are a complete 180 politically with the Pacific Coast. New York, another state. You got the area near New York City and Albany and Buffalo, and the rest of the state's red. And you know, and if you said New York, why not throw in Pennsylvania too? Because without Pittsburgh and Philly, Pennsylvania is a pretty red state. Okay, what I'd like to do is I'd like to show you a map of the 2018 election, and in looking at this electoral map, you have, we call it the left coast, the Pacific coast, the states of Washington, Oregon, and California. And in a previous video, like when we talked, Mac and I talked about the situation, the gun issue in state of Washington. Basically what you got is you got the Cascade Mountain region. And if you look at the blue in Washington and Oregon, right there's the Cascade Mountain region. Mm-hmm. And on the west of the Cascade Mountain region is where the libs are. And to the east of the Cascade Mountain region, you know, that's where the conservatives are, the rural, the farmers, the ranchers, those guys, you know, and it's a completely different scenario. To the point where they just soon be with Idaho now. Likewise, when you go down into California, you can see again along the Pacific Ocean, solid blue. And I don't know if the Sierra Nevadas act as a boundary there or not, but as you go east inland to where the desert is, it turns Republican. Virginia. Let's just look at Virginia. You got Richmond and the D.C. suburb area, and that's what's so offensive. And honestly, I'm glad I'm not in Virginia, because I'd probably be spitting bullets right now. But you got D.C. Political insiders living in a suburb, dictating to the rest of the state how things are going to be. And you think, what could be more offensive than that? And we're from Michigan, so let's just look at Michigan here too. You have that little blue area around Detroit, and then as you go north, you got what we call the Bay Area, Saginaw, where the Saginaw River connects to what is that, Lake Huron, is it? I think,
Yes.
Lake Huron. We call that the Bay Area. That's all blue, you know, and it's going to dictate to the rest of the state. So, and finally, we'll go to Texas because we have our professional political commentator here, fresh from Texas. We got this blue part there down in the southern state. Any comments about Texas?
The reason that's along the borders is the illegals are driving that through the border area. Actually, they're coming in, they're being promised everything by the Democratic Party. And so they're coming in and voting Democrat because of that.
But if you know, like you look at that southern point of the southern part that stabs right down into Mexico, it's all blue.
Yeah.
You know, and that's scary.
The mayor of Houston and the chief police of Houston are very, very liberal, and so they flock to that area.
Well, those are sanctuary cities both, right?
Yes.
And let's just.
Houston and Texas would like to get rid of Austin too, because Austin is also a sanctuary
Well,
city.
you have the University of Texas there, so you're going to attract liberals.
Right.
What would concern me also, perhaps you have some insight here, is the lighter red area along the Rio Grande.
Actually, it's changing to more red currently.
It's changing to more red?
Yeah.
Okay, well then I'm not so worried.
Yeah, some of it is. We've got some real strong conservative leaders that are running in this primary and in this next election in that area. We're hoping to overseat actually some of the people that were Democrats in that area. They were working on that down there.
Are there? Is Texas a term limit state
No.
for the governor? Okay, good.
All right. Any further thoughts or comments?
Now, well, it does bring to mind the need for the Electoral College. It's almost a similar issue on a smaller local scale.
Well, the Electoral College is, I was going to bring that up kind of in that's kind of what's in the balance here, why some of this may or may not occur. I have some thoughts. But if you look, you know, through flyover country, it's so solid red, but you got your pockets of blue, or you have, you know, your urban areas. You know, even Florida, where Miami is. Look how blue Miami is, you know. But
Dade County.
anyways, you know, when I was growing up as a kid, and I'm sure Mac remembers this, Superior, or the Upper Peninsula, always fancied themselves as the other Michigan, and how they wanted to be superior, you know, the state of Superior, you know. And what was driving that was a little bit different than what we got going on today. But I'll tell you what I think is different today is once you start throwing people in jail and taking their guns, that makes this whole idea of secession almost scary possible.
Well, are we back to
You know?
the same kind of division we had in the 1850s? And one of our first videos was, could we have another civil war? You and I thought so. Our other co-host didn't think it was going to happen, and we didn't imply it was going to happen imminently, just that it could happen.
And what might trigger it.
And what might trigger it, and then visit that video, please.
And that was before Virginia went crazy.
Yeah.
We put out that video, and then months later, Virginia.
Well, it wasn't long after that, if you remember, that newly elected Governor Ralph Northam, Mr. Blackface, decided that he was going to murder babies after they were born.
And we did a segment on that too. And that Virginia election was influenced by Bloomberg, if I'm not mistaken.
Heavily.
He threw a boatload of money. You know, that guy's got more money than he knows what to do with, so he's going to screw up the country for us. You know.
Yeah. And gun rights are going to be the big thing, I think,
Yes.
in this country. I think.
And you know what? Democrats have guns too. Democrats need to protect their families too.
Right.
In this article I read by Valerie Richardson, she thinks that if they continue with, and she specifically mentioned the gun issue, that if they continue, this could evolve from fanciful, wishful thinking to a very distinct possibility.
Right.
At least the effort, the effort will be there as to the success. And this was part of the problem she was mentioning was, and we're going to go back to Oregon and Idaho. the neighboring counties of Oregon could become part of Idaho and it wouldn't upset the balance in DC. In other words, it has such a small population, it wouldn't affect the senators, it wouldn't affect the representative, wouldn't affect the Electoral College.
Yeah, because each state's going to have 2 senators, no
Yeah.
matter. Vermont has a population of 600,000, which is 4 times less than Las Vegas.
As my first sergeant in the Army used to say, however, Virginia is a different story. If enough counties in Virginia went to West Virginia, and this is where she thinks, and this is why she thinks Virginia could be the battleground. If counties in Virginia went to West Virginia, that could have an immediate impact on the balance of power, and under the Electoral College, representation in D.C. and whatnot. Virginia becomes a less politically strong state. West Virginia, which is conservative, becomes stronger. Democrats aren't going to go for that. And so it begins, and maybe who knows what happens.
Well, we know what
next.
happened last time when we had secessions.
Yeah,
Didn't go well.
really. Well, that's
639,000 people ended up dead.
So, anyways, any final thoughts before we wrap up here, people?
I'm a firm believer that we need to keep the Electoral College, because the thing is otherwise, just the big cities would be ruling this country,
Absolutely.
and the rural people would have no say.
Right.
And so,
And I've called it the Hunger Games scenario, and I think Coda Boy 32 Tactical did a segment on Virginia. He too referenced the term Hunger Game scenario, where you got the good time rock and roll city living the high life, while the people in the rural land are living in abject poverty and misery.
Well, I think what drives this is the idea that they have preached, even from the time when I was in high school, democracy in America, democracy, democracy, democracy. We're a constitutionally limited republic. The government is limited in what it can and cannot do. That's the difference between a republic and a mob rule, which is the most votes. You and I the 3 of us could have a vote. We could vote to have Kim's truck
Yeah,
because we have 2 votes and she has 1.
and I like Rangers. Used to have a Ranger. Okay, any other
That's it for me, I
thoughts
think.
or comments? Anything?
no.
All right. Okay, so that's it. That's a wrap. And remember, be safe, watch your 6, and to all you blue areas out there in the electoral map, don't tread on me.